Good morning, one and all, and welcome to this morning's video. So, I don't actually have any pairs on watch today. It's been a bit of a crazy week for me. I've been busy throughout doing various things. I did place a trade on Wednesday, I believe it was. So this is just a recap of that trade. And unfortunately, my family and I received some tragic news yesterday that they are now stopping my fiance's cancer treatment, because it's no longer effective. So some very difficult news to process, and the market across the board, the things that I'd be looking for look like they need a little bit more development anyway. But I think, all things considered, it's probably wise if I just took 24 hours to not actually trade, because obviously there's a lot of things, as I said, psychologically to process. So I just thought I'd bring you a trade recap. And you might think, well, how are you here this morning? Well, this is what happens. And I wanted to talk about this to start with. This is what happens when you actually work on your mind, when you become a person who's not, immune to emotions, but becomes indestructible. Like, there is nothing. This is the toughest chapter of my life by a million miles. Yet I still do all the things that I need to do each day. Just like Mark within our community, our Pied Piper, our commander-in-chief, he's got things going on in his life, but he still shows up regardless, because that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do as a man. That's what you have to do when, in my case, the majority of your family are women, and you feel a responsibility to be a bit chivalrous and step up to the mark and look after them. Okay, you have to show up. Life doesn't give a shit. The market doesn't give a shit what you've got going on in your life. People still demand money from you. The bills still need paying. You still need to do all these things. Okay, so you have to be a bit, not emotionless, but stoic in these scenarios, and it's not about not feeling emotions. It's about being punched in the face and standing there and saying, hit me with another one. Hit me again. Is that the best you've got? Do it again. Harder. That's what you do in life when you've got things going on that, hurt you. That's part of being a man, in my opinion and experience. But let's break this trade down. Okay, this was, I'll tell you what happened in a minute. I wanted to bring you this one just in case people think that I only place losses, because I wasn't making videos when I went through, when I had a profitable January, February and March. I don't think I documented a lot of those, or recapped a lot of those positions. But I had a profitable January, February and March. I think I lost about 0.5% in April, and we're currently up for May as well as it stands. I think I've placed 4 trades this month. One was a win, one was a break even, one was a loss. This one was actually a winner, and I'll break that down for you. So on the higher time frames, we had this bullish retrace here. Okay, so on the higher time frames, you can see that we have tapped into we tapped into there. Okay, we near missed to it, suggesting that there was volume there. We moved to the downside by way of impulse corrections and continuations. However, if we're going to keep moving to the downside, okay, from here, so if this was going to be a further impulse correction continuation to push lower, we wouldn't typically see a bullish retrace like this, which retraces 80 to 90% of the length of the body of the previous daily candle. Okay, and as we drill down, there's some little clues that indicated that we might be pushing a little bit higher. Okay, so we had the bullish push up there, slightly corrective move up to start with, but then we impulsively break out of all of that. And then as we drill down to the 1 hour chart, you can see that it's not overly significant, but we tapped into this sharp hook point here. Why is this significant? It's significant because we had a sharp move there, which broke above and rallied for a reasonable amount of distance. Okay, what did we break above? And we broke above. There was enough of an exchange of liquidity there. I'm on the 4 hour now, but enough of an exchange of liquidity there to cause price to smash through this significant high here without respecting it in the slightest. Okay, so when we broke back above that, okay, and formed a continuation afterwards, and also I was playing the failure of this. So we had a potential bear structure, okay, which I was anticipating something like that. When this failed, often the failure of these structures offer lucrative move in the other direction. Okay, because presumably because there's a lot of fear generated by the people that thought this was a sell, it turns out not to be a sell, and then you get the impulsive move in the other direction. So because of that failure of that structure, because of the fact that we tapped into that sharp hook point, because we've moved up impulsively and corrected sideways, if we just unpack the trade a little bit, so we corrected sideways for the whole of the Asian session, right? So the correction started about just before swap hours. That's a very deliberate correction. Price doesn't typically correct for an entire trading session like that, okay, if it's just going to plummet to the downside, okay? So we failed bear structure. We broke above that little hook point there. We impulsed up. We corrected sideways on the 1 hour chart all throughout the Asian session. Very deliberate correction. So this was a 1 hour consolidation. And in keeping with my forecast, I specified that if I couldn't see the structure on the 1 hour chart, then I would drop down to the 15-minute chart to look for an entry, okay? So I dropped down to the 15-minute chart, and if we just analyze this, where was it? So there was our signal candle. This is something I said I'm trying to pay more attention to. So what I liked about this is that we had that little structure there. We had the 1, the 2, the 3. We retested the back end of that structure. This was the signal candle. This was signaling to me that there was liquidity in that area, right? So now I'm looking for a confirmation candle, confirmation of the idea that there's liquidity in the area. We got that. But what we don't do is, so what I did here is I set an entry on the break of this structure. So I had one entry up here. But when we look for, I was also looking for an entry within the structure. But what we don't do when we're looking for an entry within the structure, those of us who trade the Falcon strategy, we don't take an entry within the structure if we can't get to approximately 1% by the edge of the structure. So you can see there, if I was to get long on the break of that entry candle there within the structure, then I wouldn't be able to get to 1%. So what I did is a little jiggery pokery. I set a limit order. I measured from here to here 50%, and I set a limit order there, which gave me not quite, but approximately 50% to that high there. Okay, it is not quite. I couldn't quite get 1% to there, but more or less. So we had this candle here. This would have been my preferred entry. You can see it. What price typically does is it pulls back 50% and then it goes. I didn't manage to get that one, so I got the next candle. So this is slightly in the wrong. Yeah, no, that is in the right place. So I got tagged in by this candle. I thought I was going to be tagged out for the loss, especially after that candle. But we have to remember we are on the 15-minute chart. And then, so I had my stop loss just below here just to protect me. And then the momentum started to come in. Now I'm managing this on the 1 hour chart. You can see that we pushed up here. So I moved my stop loss. When this candle was active, I think we were floating around this area. I moved my stop loss. I didn't move it to break even. I actually had I had a guy calling me and knocking my front door because I'd employed someone to get rid of a bee's nest, which was in the eaves of our property. So I had all these calls going on, people knocking the front door, and I had to deal with that at the same time. So when I didn't get a chance to move to break even, but I moved my stop loss to here when price was, I think it was wicking in that area. Okay, and I measured 50% of this move from here to here, I believe. Yeah, 50% of that move, wherever price was at the time, and I locked in there. And I was looking at this. I was interested in this area because we have to remember that we are still in a downtrend technically. This wasn't the most significant of lows. And also there's another couple of things to factor in. So what I did here, I'll talk about that in a second. So we broke above there. When we broke above, so the question I'm asking myself is, how did we break this area? Did we break it impulsively or correctively? Well, that's not an impulsive break. We've wicked above and then closed below. This is not a particularly convincing candle. It's a green candle, but it's got a big wick above it. This is suggesting that this might be an area of significance for a sell. So what I did is I locked in about 10 pips below here, okay, which gave me 3.17x or 3.17 times my 0.5% risk. And one of the reasons I thought that this might be a good area for a sell is because, one, it's sharp move. Two, there was a big runoff last time around, which caused price to smash through that previous low. Okay, so there may be liquidity there. So this could just be a bit of a kind of V shape, what we see typically. There was another reason as well. Look, there's a little gap here. See that little gap? Now, the reason price might be coming back up to that area is because there are still orders in that area that weren't filled, that are basically stuck in the gap. So we have a sharp move where there was a big runoff last time around, which smashed through that low. And we also have a gap where there might be orders. So this is potentially an area where price could reverse, especially when we're in a downtrend. So what happened next? I got taken out there, and you can see price completely retraced. Okay, so I like this one, not because of how much I made on it, but because of I basically milked it for all it's worth based on, the probable scenarios and the possible. So I got taken out there for 3.17, and that has put my Falcon funded account at a record profit. So even with all this stuff going on in my life, it shows that if you work on your mind, people make it. I hope people are inspired by this, that think to themselves, oh, I've got this going on in my life, that going on in my life, blah, 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 blah. If you want to find if you want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. And hopefully, what I've said at the beginning of this video makes some of you think to yourself, I hope it puts what you've got going on in your life into context, unless you've got something similar going on or something worse. And hopefully you think to yourself, my problems are not actually that bad. This guy is showing up. He's still placing profitable trades, even with all that stuff going on, even with people knocking the front door, ringing him, and all that kind of chaos going on. And it just shows that you can do this, but you can't do it unless your brain is scattered and your mind is all over the place. And I'm not going to lie, I don't always find it easy. I'm not always calm and collected 100% of the time, but most of the time I am, and it's something that I've had to work on, because I definitely wasn't like this to start with. But anyway, that is euro dollar. That is the trade recap. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather at the minute, so that's another reason to perhaps not be trading. But have a great day, folks. Whatever you've got going on in your life, trust me, you can deal with that. You're more mentally equipped than you realize. Most people are, but they tell themselves things like, I can't deal with this. The minute you tell yourself you can't deal with something, you're wiring your brain to believe that. So be very careful about the language that you use. But have a great day. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll speak to you again soon.